Hi, this is Mike Harrington again. It's good to be with you today. I'm glad you joined us. If you didn't hear the introduction about who I am in the first session, let me just give you a quick update on that and tell you why I think you should listen to some of the things that I'm going to say. I'm a guy who spent over 40 years in business. I was the president of Western Union North America. I also ran their commercial business. I took it from 5 million to over 500 million when I left. And I was also in the latter part of my career doing all of the global acquisition for Western Union. And since we operated in 107 countries, that was a pretty large job. I spent a lot of time on airplanes. I am a proud holder of a 2.5 million miler certificate or card from United Airlines. So that's a little bit about what I did at Western Union. When I left there in 2005, I then went on to run a public company by the name of Jackson Hewitt. Jackson Hewitt was the number 2 player in the tax preparation space behind H&R Block. H&R Block, probably a more familiar name, but Jackson Hewitt was the number 2 player. So let me talk a little bit about what I'm going to cover today. As we go through these sessions, what I want to do is give you first an overview of the sessions we're going to talk about, and which I'm going to try to do in the first couple of sessions, but I then want to really drill down in each session and make sure you understand the key components of each of those sessions. When I talk about, leadership, for example, I'm not just going to say, hey, you should be a good leader. I'm going to try to tell you what a good leader looks like, what are the principles that a good leader should use, and then some examples of leadership which we'll talk about. So today we're going to talk about the phases of business. This is really starting to drill down a little bit on what I've talked about in the first couple of sessions about what are the phases of the business. And then we're going to go into each one of those separately and drill down. So that's where we're going to start today. And what I'm going to talk about in this first several segments of these episodes is about the various phases of the business. And I'm just going to refresh a little bit about what we talked about last time. There are 5 phases in the business. There's the ideation phase, which which is a startup part of a business. There's the pioneering or test market phase. There's the infrastructure or build out phase. There's a steady state phase, and then finally there's the bureaucracy stage. And I'm going to talk about how you can manage and make sure your business is at the right stage at the right time, and what's important as you go through that various phase of your business. So last time we talked about the ideation phase. There's lots of great companies that do a great job in the ideation phase, and we're going to talk about how they do it. We talked about how they did it in the last session, so I won't spend a lot of time there. But it's very important that you have somebody that wakes up every morning in your business that's thinking about what is the next phase of your business. What are the competitors doing in your marketplace? What does the environment look like? What is the technology that may take us out of our number 1 position? What are those things that can help us grow the business if we're the first one to do it? You don't want to be in the position of where your competitor comes up with the next best idea or the next best mousetrap. And many companies, which we'll talk about, are in that space. But today, our session is going to be focused on the pioneering or test market phase of your business. So let's just say you've come up with a great idea. You think this is the thing that could be the killer idea in your place in the market. And so how do you get that product to market? What do you do with it? Well, in the test market phase, what you're going to begin to do is to see if that product or that service or that technology or whatever it is has legs to grow and be the next big player and the next big player in your product portfolio. So what are the things you need to consider when you go to market, when you look at how to test market this? Well, there are a variety of different ways to go to market, but I'm going to tell you there's really only about 3 that are important for you to know. Now, there are 3 different ways to go to market. The first one is to be the innovative leader. And what that simply means is you're the person that if there's a new product that comes out that replaces your current product, you're going to be the innovator that does it. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of companies that do this really well. For example, there's a company called Nike, which is headquartered in Beaverton, Oregon. If Nike, my children were at the phase where they were buying clothes and things for high school, I can remember several conversations where they would come to me and they'd say, Dad, I need to have Jordan Airs, or I need to have the next version, the Nike Pump, or whatever Nike was creating for that point. Nike is an innovative company that creates and replaces their own products one and multiple times in a year. So that if somebody has got the next best thing, it's probably a Nike. It's a Nike shoe for kids, for example. It's the next version of their product. And, you know, they're very expensive sneakers, but kids love them because they've done a very good job of marketing the next best thing. So if you look at innovative companies, you look at companies like 3M. 3M comes out with multiple hundreds of new ideas and new products every year. These are companies whose whole infrastructure and whose whole DNA is built on the idea that they're an innovative company and they're going to create the next best product in the marketplace. They're not going to let their competitors do it. They're going to drag the market to where they want it to go. So again, innovation is one way to go to market. The next place that you can go is a place called price leadership. Now, if you look at being a price leader, you have to have the right amount of infrastructure in place, or the right kind of infrastructure, I should say, that will allow you to create the lowest cost product in the marketplace. So when you think about that, who do you think about? Well, I don't know if you know Walmart. Walmart is a major player in that segment of the market. Everyday pricing, everyday products for less money is really sort of the mantra at Walmart. And I'll tell you an example of that in a minute when I work for Western Union. But Walmart has created in their DNA of their company the structure which allows them to create the products at the lowest possible cost that they can do, so they can be the price leader in the market. So that's one example. Another example is a company called Costco. Costco, when you go to Costco, it's a warehouse situation where you go in and you buy bulk items, and by buying it in bulk and reducing their cost and creating an infrastructure which allows them to sell, they have created a position as a price leader in the marketplace. That's two examples, and I'll come back to those in a minute. The other one, which is really, if you look at it, is probably, again, if you're a company that's not as concerned about price, this is probably the strategy you want to use. Or if you can't create the infrastructure to be the price leader or be an innovator, then you probably want to have a customer intimacy strategy. Now, that's interesting because what that does is it creates a hand-holding situation with your customer, which allows you to be the only preferred product in the portfolio. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that, real-life examples. One is American Express. American Express has a customer intimacy strategy. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'll give you a perfect example in my own life. I was in New York City for a meeting. And I was in a meeting all day. I had my wallet in my coat behind on my door in my office. Somebody stole my credit card. Well, I had an American Express card and a couple other credit cards in there. But my wife was coming in on a Friday night, and we were going to, enjoy New York. Well, she had credit cards, of course, but I would like to have had my own credit card. So I called American Express. I told them the situation. And I said, hey, I really have been doing business with you guys since 1973, which was very proud of at that point. And they said, Mr. Yerington, if you can come down to the American Express office in New York and tell us the answer to a few questions, which are, private questions they ask you when you set up the account, we will create on the spot for you a new American Express card. Now, think about that. Is that a customer intimate strategy? Think about if your credit card company would do that for you. I can't even get them to answer the phone for me most times. But it created in me a sense of loyalty to that brand, which I've had that card in my wallet many, many years, and I've upgraded it to gold and platinum and all that. But it created in me a sense of loyalty to that brand. That's a customer intimacy strategy. I'll give you another example of customer intimate strategy. My daughter worked at a Nordstrom store in Southern California. Now, let me give you a different story, which is equally as good. I had a friend of mine by the name of Mark Perlberg that worked in the company that I was in at the time. Mark was going out to make a major presentation to the utility out in San Francisco. And back in those days, this is going to date me a little bit, Mark had a slide tray which he used to do a slideshow. Well, the slide tray, Mark was smart enough to put the slide tray in the overhead, but he checked his bags through. And long story short, his bags never got there. So Mark, who is getting ready to make a major presentation to a major utility the next day, has a slide tray, which means he can do the presentation, but he's in street clothes. He doesn't have a suit and tie. So he calls the local Nordstrom's and he says, hey, here's my situation. I've got a presentation, which is a major presentation for me. I don't have my suit, I don't have my clothes, and I don't have a tie or shirt or any of those things. And they said, well, Mr. Perlberg, let me ask you, what size suit do you normally wear off the rack? And he gave him the size. And they said, what color shirt do you prefer? And he told them what it was. And he said, now, what kind of ties do you like? And so Mark gave him some ideas of colors of ties. They took the suit guy over to where he was staying in the hotel. They fitted him with a suit, and they said, we'll tailor it tonight. We'll be back tonight. Here are several shirts of the color you said you liked. Which one do you want? Mark, of course, picked the shirt that he wanted. He picked the tie he wanted, and I think he had shoes that were appropriate. Now, do you think Mark would ever buy a suit from anybody else except Nordstrom? No, because they have created a customer intimate strategy which says the customer is always right. And if you do that, if you're in the customer business and you create that strategy where you do the things that American Express did for me, or if you're Nordstrom's and you did the things that Nordstrom did for my friend Mark Perlberg, you would never leave that brand because that brand has created in you a customer intimate strategy. Now, it's easier said than done because you obviously have to have the infrastructure in place to do that. And a lot of times people, and I tell people this all the time, I love accountants, but sometimes the bean counters or the accountants in an organization do things that cut costs in the wrong areas. If you're a customer intimate strategy, you don't want to ever outsource that to somebody else because that's your touch point with a customer. And that's the place that you need to be talking to the customer and finding out what they need. And for people like me that use the American Express card a lot, they don't want me to be talking to somebody in a foreign location that doesn't speak English well. They want me to be talking to their customer service rep who knows my background, who knows my experience with American Express. So again, just to reiterate, the three ways to go to market: you can be the market innovator, you can be the Nikes of the world, the 3Ms of the world, you can be a price leader, you can be the Walmarts of the world or the Costco's, which are really focused on and create infrastructure that takes cost out of products so they can sell them for the lowest price possible, or you can be the customer intimate strategy. And again, in my businesses that I run today, I run a lodging industry. I'm a customer intimacy focused business. People know who I am because I call them and I thank them for their business. I say, hey, thanks for leaving a good comment. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing that. All of which create touch points with the customer, which reinforces their intimacy with your company. And what you're trying to do is build brand loyalty. I look at customers not as a one-time event, because these are repetitive customers in many cases in my business and other businesses that I've run. And I'm trying to build a long-term value-added relationship with that customer in a customer intimacy strategy. And again, as you look at your customers, don't just look at the one-time touch point. Don't just look at how they got into your business. That's important, of course. Maybe that great idea you created that brought them there. Now, once they're in your franchise, how do you keep them there? How do you do the hand-holding and touch points that keep them there? Again, I'll give you one other example. A good friend of mine worked at a company called Citicorp. You've heard of it? And Citicorp found out that when people called their customer support number and they got some help from the customer support number, they were likely to stay longer term with Citicorp. So Citicorp began to look at ways to give the customers an opportunity to call their customer service. And I don't know all the techniques they use, but when Citicorp began to do that, they began to find out customers, they like the hand-holding. They like to talk to customer support reps. They like the fact that Citicorp was doing that in order to encourage them. Maybe it was something minor, like, hey, did you know that, we have an issue with this balance and we've taken care of it, Mr. Customer. Thank you very much. So you should be looking for those ways that you go to market that create the kind of atmosphere you want for your product. So what about going to market? Let's talk about that. Test marketing. Test marketing is best done with some customer friendlies. If you've got some folks out there who will test your product, that's the best way to test it. Don't test it with your best customer. Your best customer who may be clamoring for this product, they may think, wow, I need this new technology, I need this new service now. Don't ever do it with your best customers, because they're the ones that you're going to hurt the most if you screw up, and you don't want to do that, but you might if it's a new product. So when you test the product, make sure you're testing it with a product or with a customer that doesn't kill you if you do it wrong. I'll give you an example. I created for Western Union, I created the westernunion.com channel. And because I created it, I was the guy responsible for it. I was testing it. And when I tested it, I didn't realize at the time that we should test it in a very small way, which we've since fixed, and the product is very successful today. But when we first tested it, we tested it in a small area, and we had a limit of, I think it was $200. And we found out that some bad actors in Russia would take a credit card, go into Western Union online product, and then send cash to themselves, because one of the things that we did was we paid out in cash in minutes in multiple locations around the world. So if you've got a bad credit card, and we did the best checks we could on those credit cards, but some of them got through, and so we paid you out in cash on the other end. So what I'm telling you is that as you test markets, as you test products, make sure you don't shoot yourself in the foot by putting too much information out in the marketplace and causing it to be a bad situation for your company or for your customer. You want to make sure that you do the best job you can in putting all the parameters in place and all the infrastructure in place to make sure that you have a good test. Now, if you have a good test, we're going to move into the next phase, which is building out the infrastructure you need in your business. And that's really equally important to the success of your product. So again, today we talked about the testing, the pioneering stage of your market, test market phase. We talked about various ways to go to market, and there may be others, but I think if you choose these three as a major players and major ways to go to market, you'll find a way that fits your product. You a little of this in any product. The innovation, the price leader, and the customer intimacy is all part of a good marketing strategy. But you'll pick one of those areas which is your key emphasis for your organization to go to market. And as I said, American Express being a good example, and Nordstrom being a good example of customer intimacy. In those markets where you're not as concerned about the price, at the price point, when I go to Walmart, I expect the best price. I don't expect a lot of hand-holding. In fact, when I go to Walmart today, they want me to check myself out, which is what I do. There's no checkers there anymore. There's no people that check you out. So they're trying to take cost out of the business so that they can provide a low-cost product to you. And when I go to Walmart, I expect that I'll get the best product and at the lowest price. So it's not an issue. Do I need a lot of hand-holding? Do I need a lot of customer intimacy reactions? No, I don't. But I'm not paying for that either. Whereas with American Express, when I pay my fee every year for a platinum card or a gold card, I expect a lot of hand-holding. I expect that they'll take my calls, they'll solve my problem, they'll fix whatever the problem is. They'll, if somebody is overcharged me or there's an issue with my card, they'll fix it immediately. And so I'm telling you that decide early on which is the way that your company will go to market. We're going to, as I said, we're going to drill down at much greater depth in some of these areas as we go forward. But I want to share with you something I shared in the first session about kind of the way I look at the experience that I have. I'd like to be able to say I'm the smartest guy on the block, but I'm not always the smartest guy, not even in the room. And I always used to tell people, listen, there's somebody sitting in this room that may have a better idea than I do, and I want you to share it. I don't want you to feel like you can't share your ideas. And so you as a leader need to encourage people that may not talk as much to bring that idea out. Sometimes the best ideas that I got were from people that didn't always say a lot. And I also would encourage you to reread Revelation 3, 7, and 8, because it says this: pray to the God who can open doors no man can close, and close doors no man can open. And by doing that, you're really inviting the God of the universe to come into your life and into your business and say, hey, you shouldn't go through that door. That's a closed door. You shouldn't go through it. Or I'm going to open this door for you. And I can't tell you how many times in my life I've seen God show up and do that very thing for me. So as we finish today, remember, lots of good things we're going to be talking about over the next several sessions. I'm excited about being here with you, and I look forward to hearing and talking to you next time. Thank you.